This is The Healthy Healer, where true voice is your medicine. This is where we help doctors and other healers navigate through the challenging times by learning from the best minds in the healing industry. Laugh, cry, and be surprised. It's entertainment, education, and inspiration so you can continue to be the unique and amazing healer you were destined to be. Welcome to humanity. Welcome to The Healthy Healer with Dr. Fred.
Hello, everybody. It's Dr. Fred, and welcome to the next amazing episode of The Healthy Healer. And tonight we have a special guest, a real treat. I like interviewing people who are off the beaten trail. I like having conversations with healers who aren't doing it the same way that most of us expect healers to work. I like people who have found their way into a niche that is unique, that actually takes advantage of their own personal skill set and blessings that they have. And my guess is that tonight's guest matches all that criteria. Tonight we have Laura Hoorweg. And Laura is someone who practices her healing in a different way than most of us know. Laura likes to call herself an international spiritual counselor and a clairvoyant medium. She says that she has laser-like ways of seeing relevant details in all the areas of our lives. Maybe we'll get a chance to look at that a little bit today. She wants to know whether you need clarity, direction, and confirmation, as well as new perspectives in your life. And if you think about it, you probably do. And she guarantees that you will have a changing life shift when you work with her. She assists clients in getting in touch with their authentic self. Does that sound familiar? I think it does. And she's honored to really help people contact loved ones who have crossed over. That's right, transition, to provide comfort and confirmation, really realizing that love never died in the first place. She loves empowering people in the most authentic and passionate way possible, and she has found herself as a spiritual counselor, an intuitive coach, and nothing less than a clairvoyant medium. So, Laura, thank you so much for being on The Healthy Healer. It's just a pleasure to have you. And tell us a little bit more about who you are. But the way I want you to do that is a little bit different than you may be used to. So if you listen to any of my shows, I have this 9-letter question I like to ask people. It's grammatically, and it really gets people up on their heels a little bit. And being a difficult question for 9 letters, after all. And the question is, Laura Hoorweg, who are you?
Probably many things. I have been many things in this life, and I've been many things in lives before. So
Great.
I think of myself basically a multifaceted, multidimensional spirit living in a human body.
All right, that's beautiful. And a multidimensional spirit living in a human body. Let me ask you a question about that. Are you that, or are we all multidimensional spirits living in a human body, in your greatest estimation?
Oh, we all are, for sure. We're basically spiritual beings having a human experience. Most people think that they're human having a spiritual experience.
Mm-hmm. So talk to me a little bit about this word multidimensional then. I know there's 3 dimensions, and I frankly also know about extra dimensions beyond that, but most of us are walking around in this 3-dimensional world thinking that those are maybe time, if for those physicists out there get credit for being the 4th dimension. Yeah. But we don't really talk about 5 or 7, 9, or even 12 dimensions. And maybe you don't know an exact number, but give me a scoop. Give me the overriding, sort of hovering, observing view of what do you mean when you use the word that we humans are multidimensional in nature?
It's because even though we don't realize it, we are living in multiple dimensions at the same time. And some people have had experiences where I like calling it sliding. There used to be a TV program called Sliders, and it was about a guy who traveled through different dimensions. And if you listen to the new physics, there's probably, I think they discovered that there's up to 13 now. I think that's the number that they're resting on. But all these dimensions, these universes, whichever way you want to express it, they're all within the same, they're all piled on each other. They're all in the same space. So sometimes when what I call the veil, which is the dividing line between different dimensions, it often thins, and we're allowed to either have some experiences, peek into other dimensions, sometimes have experiences when this is where what they call astral traveling and things like that. I actually believe too in our dreams and our sleep time that we actually experience many other dimensions. We have classic dream in the 3D sense, but a lot of the stuff that happens to us in our dream state is things that are happening actually in other dimensions.
Fascinating. I remember other shows that took us to different time zones. There was Time Tunnel, and then there was Time Tunnel was a classic, of course. And then there was this cartoon, the cartoon with Shamans and Mr. Peabody and Mr. Wizard. And I don't know if you're old enough to know about
That's a little before my time, but
you know a little bit about it? Have you ever seen any episodes with Help Mr. Wizard? It's pretty incredible stuff, actually. I really appreciated that show when I was a child because that's what they would do. It's like a animated version of the Time Tunnel, which is actually preceded the Time Tunnel. And it was fantastic. Seamus and the dog was so cool, and Mr. Peabody was so cool, and the Mr. Wizard he'd respond to a swirling, the screen would just go into a swirl.
Yes.
And then he would say, "Help, Mr. Wizard," because he would find himself in some big trouble somewhere in one of the other dimensions. With all that said, I want to ask you a question. When I think of the word clairvoyant, which is a word that you tag onto yourself, I'm mostly thinking about people who can, at least from this three-dimensional perspective, have access to a future, actually getting what's going to happen. Maybe it's not even prediction in that way. I've really run into some pretty incredible people who have clairvoyant skills. And it doesn't seem like they're predicting or guessing. It seems like they're almost like reporting. Like in some ways, it really is. Now, there's a couple questions about predicting the future that I think are the classic contemporary questions. Like, if you can predict the future the way it was going to happen, can you change the future that was otherwise going to occur? If you predicted some calamity, would I be able to prevent that calamity if, in fact, I knew it was coming in the first place?
That's a little bit different question. Just let me go back.
Yeah, I have questions embedded in there. So go ahead.
Yeah. What I've seen and what I've experienced is that the future is always in motion. So as a psychic or as a clairvoyant, what we do is we look into the possible. There's possibility, there's probability, and then there's what I call the highest probability. And what I believe is that the best and most talented and most experienced psychic or clairvoyant, let's just use the word psychic, okay? Because that takes in everything, are able to see the highest probability, okay? But even with the highest probability, when I'm seeing something, when I'm in a session with somebody, I can only see the highest probability from this particular moment. Tomorrow, 2 weeks from now, or a year from now, because of the fact that the future is always in motion, that could change. But it depends on the talent of the sayer, how accurate they are. And it also depends on what's happening with all us wonderful humans and all the things that are going on around us in the universe, how fixed that is. I believe the future is always changeable. Whether we can actually change it individually is another story. I think we change it as a collective, but I really don't think that we're able to, as individuals, to actually change the future.
All right. I hear you loud and clear. And anyone who has a different idea than that there might be some people who are listening or watching who think that they can change the future. Here's what I have. This is the next piece. I've talked to a number of people who, again, as I mentioned, who declare themselves to have clairvoyant skills, intuitive clairvoyant skills. We talk about predicting the future, and there's a high probability of X happening, but we're not sure if it's actually going to happen. I wonder if there's some ways, a same uncertainty of the stuff that's in the present. Did this actually happen kind of thing? As we go through it, these days, the whole idea of what's going on, the whole idea of what really is occurring, the whole idea of reality as it unfolds becomes somewhat questionable. or becomes clear, maybe it's being transparently or fluidly questionable. Like what
Yes.
just happened? Did that just happen? So in
Yes.
some ways, there's the best we can hope for, in fact, in something that's happening now, is that it's a high probability that it just happened, rather than
Exactly.
something declaring with some kind of convincing assurance that something just happened. It may not have actually, it's only a high probability that which we just experienced actually happened. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. And the other thing that comes into that is when we start sliding, either partially, I think we don't do it fully when we're awake, but when we slide into let's call it a parallel universe or a parallel dimension, and like talked about the veil being thin, and when we even just put our toe in the water, we are changing our present. Things happen. I've had some really bizarre experiences with that. And that just shows me that even our present is it's like playing 52 card pickup. You just
Yeah.
never know what's actually going to happen.
Interesting. Yeah. So it seems like when we're sliding, because we're putting our foot into another dimension, our present is adjusted as a function of putting our foot in another dimension.
Exactly.
I get it. So our present experience is no longer 100% present. We get to actually twist the whole idea of this thin veil. I have another question about this thin veil, and that is its relationship to two other creatures that we talk about, and most of us don't really have a big clue about it. And that is the creatures called ghosts and shamans. So both of these creatures are reportedly living in between dimensions. So this idea of when you, like, a ghost didn't make it up, maybe didn't make it all the way, or got himself halfway back, or him or herself, or with these days, you even got to be careful about gender when you're speaking about ghosts. Oh my God, where are we at? Anyway, getting over the gender identity of ghosts, which maybe is like a good thing to call this podcast, although I've already named it. So gender identity of ghosts. And then we look at shaman and whatever the plural is of shaman, or I'm not sure, shan woman, or again, we're back to gender identity of the Sha, who's really, I guess, Sha person. That's what we'll
Shop
call her.
person. Oh
A
my
Sha
God.
person.
Let's not do that.
Right. So the gender identity of these creatures that live in or around this transitional veil that you're talking about in between dimensions. Is there a relationship between ghosts and shamans and what it is, where you're trafficking?
There's a problem with ghosts because some ghosts, yes, are people who haven't fully crossed over the bridge of flowers or over into the realm of on the other side. But a lot of ghost situations are not really entities of lost souls or souls that have been trapped in this dimension. What I believe they are and what I've been shown they are is what I call echoes, because everything is energy. If you know anything about physics, everything is energy. And I believe that a lot of ghosts.
I wasn't good at it. I did pass it, and then I took it twice in college, and I passed it, but it's not like I look out at the moon every night, and I'm like, do I know anything about physics? Because I have so many questions about the moon. And anyways, thanks for asking if I knew anything about physics, but please continue.
I got an A+ in physics.
Oh my goodness. All right, then.
That's how I act. Believe it or not, that's one of my entrance points to spirituality and all of this was through physics.
So the quantum physics is really something that you're excited about. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes, but getting back to the echoes, a lot of ghosts and apparitions are simply.
Are we calling these echoes like echo?
Yeah. I call them echoes, energy echoes, because
so echo meaning like echo, one of those, and the plural of one of those is what you're saying. Okay, good. Yeah.
So they're echoes of actually the energy of those people, but they're not actually the spirit or the soul of that particular person. So there's a lot of, that's why I said you have to differentiate between the two because they're very different things. But there definitely are souls that have been trapped in the interim and they haven't fully crossed over. There's a whole bunch of reasons why that can happen, but there's two different cases of that. Now, shamans, I'm not sure how you're using the word, but shamans are actually shamanic healers. And they do a lot of traveling in terms of their the basis of shamanism is basically going into the underworld and into another dimension. It's very much the same kind of belief system as the Egyptians had, where you had to go into the underworld and then come back up into the world. And that was the journey of the soul, where shaman use it as a journey to heal and to gather back the energy of the soul. They will go traveling to help heal the soul of the person that they're working with.
So that's one of the dimensions that you're listing, however, right? When you say there's 13 dimensions, one of those would be the dimension that shaman head into. So
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. Okay. All right. And then I suppose there's other creatures as well who, besides clairvoyant mediums, which you are, and that you're very tame compared to ghosts and shamans in some ways. You're pretty human looking and pretty much rooted in this three-dimensional world most of the time, probably. I'm only most of the time as well. Maybe you can tell. There's some times when I'm definitely not rooted in these three dimensions without even imbibing in an extracurricular substance. I'm sometimes that find myself really untethered to this dimension and maybe floating out there in another dimension associated with either the past or the future, or maybe even another dimension of time or space. Like now is different than, or the future is unfolding quicker or less fast or something like that. Like time gets bent sometimes in my world and it seems like space can also get bent. That maybe I was just here last time I looked and now I'm there. And it's like, what just occurred? Is this part of interdimensional travel?
Yeah.
Maybe and give ourselves credit for randomly forgetting how we got from A to B. But maybe we did get from A to B. Maybe there was something that took place and we didn't just travel the now dimension in a gradual beaded sense to get from A to B. Is it possible that we rematerialized almost like Star Trek style, or what the hell happened there?
Because if you draw a line on a piece of paper and you have point A and point B, that's linear. But if you fold that piece of paper, you can get from A to B by just poking that pencil through a piece of paper. Okay. So that's just there's a lot of, let's just say there's a lot of weird stuff that goes on. And a lot of times we just say, oh, that was just my imagination, or I'm just having a bad day. It's my brain playing tricks on me. But I really pay attention to that kind of stuff because it really happens. And I said, I've had some pretty wild experiences and where I've had actual physical proof that I'm not imagining it. So
yeah, I hear you. It's interesting that you talk about the word, you've used the word weird a few times in this call, and you've also used the word wild on a couple of occasions. And it's interesting because it's always then from the perspective of the embeddedment that we have inside of these three dimensions. It's only weird if we assume that the number one and sole source of existence is this three-dimensional nonsense that we're all buzzing around in right now, or thinking that the prevailing conversation supports an agreement reality that this is a life packed with three-dimensionality only, with this present dimensional existence. So when you say wild or weird, or in fact, when you lean on this idea that you've proved it physically, that whole idea of proving it physically is also a three-dimensional concept in the end. And so in the end, at the end of the day, that's a concept that is only taking advantage of some of the edicts of what it means to be leaning in a three-dimensional world.
Yeah, let's just say that there's visual evidence. I've had visual. Okay, can I give you an example?
I would love that, of course. Yeah, time is right.
Okay. I used to work for a big daily newspaper, and I had clients, lots of clients in advertising. And one of my clients was a very large mall. It was a really big mall. And they had one of those multi-layered, multiple floor, great big, huge, gigantic underground parking lot.
Yeah.
So whenever I went to make a call on the owners of the mall, I always took meticulous care in parking very close to the elevator so that I could see my car from the elevator. And I also paid attention to the color of the posts, because the color of the posts were different for each floor. So if I was parked within sight of the elevator and I knew the color of the floor that I was on, it was really hard to get lost. Because if you
Yeah.
lost your car in this parking lot, you could spend the whole afternoon trying to find
Yeah.
it. So it
Along.
was a very bad thing. So anyway, this one day I went in there, found a parking spot. I was on the green floor. All the pillars were green. And I don't mean just little stripes. The entire pillar is
Understand.
green.
Yeah.
Okay. So I get on the elevator, go up, do my sales call, come back down. And this was on level 3. Okay. And I always make sure that I remembered the number. So I punched number 3, come out of the elevator,
Okay.
and I'm looking at my car. And guess what color the posts are? They're yellow. They're yellow, not green. They're yellow. Okay.
Yeah.
So you tell me how that happens, that somebody within half an hour can paint every post on that entire floor
Yeah.
a different color. That's what I mean by visible evidence. Things
see
like that. Yeah, things like that have just really strange and bizarre things.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the kind of thing that has people think there's something wrong with them when we experience that, because those things are strewn across our existence. We all have experiences. It's like that. We either don't tell people about it because we don't want people to think we're crazy. Have to get a reference to a doctor or a psychiatrist or something.
I gave
Or
up
we
on
don't
that a
have
lot
that.
earlier.
We don't even want to go there. Yeah, it's a good plan to not be using those referrals. And look, one of the things I really am curious about is you become somebody who's a clairvoyant. You have access to different dimensions. You're able to cross over effortlessly to assist people in getting back in touch with their transition loved ones. You're able to make probably at least some high level, high probability future declarations of what's going to happen. And I have really 2 questions. But the first question is, what kind of trouble can you get in? Is there something like, can people get you in trouble for declaring a future that either happened or didn't happen? Is that even possible? In other words, to hold you accountable for what it is you say about the future happening or unhappening?
They could. I always explain to people that this is what's happening. This is what I see for you right now. Now, that could change as the universe continues to spin and different things come into play. You could change it yourself by your own actions. If it's something that involves other people, they could change that possible future by their own actions. So
Yeah.
nothing's ever written in stone, but like you said, I've had so many experiences where I've just because my clients come back to me and I just absolutely nail stuff.
Yeah.
And there's no way I could have possibly known.
Right.
And so, yeah, but am I right 100% of the time? Absolutely not. When you're reading energy, you can only read the energy what you're seeing. Now,
Right. And the uncertainty principle applies not only to the future, of course, but to the past and to the present too. So we got to keep that in mind a little bit.
The past is an interesting thing because it all depends on what you're talking about as the past. If you're talking about the past as in this 3D experience, as in this lifetime, because as a psychic, I can also see into past lifetimes. So it gets really interesting. And because that's part of the way that I help people, because unfortunately, a lot of the issues and problems that we're having in this lifetime, they don't actually originate in this lifetime. A lot of them are energies carried over from past lifetime.
Interesting.
And they're triggered in this particular lifetime or reality or dimension, however you want to look at it. But what's really interesting, like when it comes to ancestral karma, if you heal that karma in this lifetime, that energy goes both backwards and forwards, which means it heals that energy in your past up to 7 generations, sometimes more. And it also can heal that energy into the future. So things get really weird.
Yeah. There we go with that weirdness. And exactly.
Yeah, I love that word.
Yeah, it is a cool word for sure. All right. And how long does it take you? Do you have to be hired, or are you doing this stuff with other people all the time? Are you finding yourself trapped as being a clairvoyant, almost like, whoa, knowing how things are going to turn out or getting an intuitive sense of what's happening without even like sitting down before you have been commissioned to proceed?
Oh, I see. I have a group of guides and angels that I call my gatekeepers, and they know that unless it's something really important and really crucial, I don't want to be bothered by people from the other side when I'm not in session. And I don't want to be bombarded with things going on if I'm not working. Now, sometimes I am, in the sense of I see things, I feel things that are happening because there's so much powerful energy now going on in our world. There's just waves and waves and waves of stuff. Well, that affects me personally. And I have to spend a lot of time in self-care in order to keep myself balanced and healthy.
Interesting. Yeah. So without asking you necessarily to predict the future of the stock market or the future of the lottery
No.
numbers, the future, all those things that seem like people would, grounded in
No.
three-dimension, would ask you to do. I'm not going to. But I am going to ask you, what have you seen with me? So you hear me, you got my humor, you got my interactive style, you got the fun that we've had as we've explored, as we wind down here. Is there anything that you saw with me that I'm on TV right now? You get it? We're being streamed on Twitter, we're being streamed on LinkedIn and Facebook. So I'm really curious. I probably have a couple people at least who are watching us even right now. What have you seen with me? Is there any kind of energy are you getting that maybe you can tell me about? I'm okay with whatever you say, by the way. Is there something I should know about my present or about the future I'm living into? And can you see anything?
I see a lot of very powerful change energy around you. So that tells me that you're about to enter into a new phase of life. And there's going to be, and you might actually even be changing what you're actually doing. You're going to be taking those same skills, but you're going to be using them in a different way. And it's going to be a big change for you.
Yeah, I hear you. You're actually right. I think that's exactly the precipice I'm on. So I truly appreciate that.
Wow.
All right. Thank you so much, Laura. It has been an honor and a pleasure, a privilege, and it really has been entertaining and educational. Thank you so much for being a esteemed guest and the Healthy Healer. I have a real opportunity to meet somebody who clearly is doing this work inside and around and through the veils into the however many of dimensions there are, maybe 13, as we said, or perhaps more.
Oh, I think there's more.
Yeah, there's probably more. Humans are limited in all the dimensions that we can actually identify. I would imagine there's unidentifiable with our present skill set dimensions that aren't yet counted in. So we have those, and we have this idea that of past lives affecting the present and present lives affecting the future. And if we fix things, if we repair things in past lives, it actually stretches through the now into the future. You can really see that it'd be very effective in helping people optimize and get an access to who they are as authentic beings. How can people find you, Laura? How should people look for you if they want to actually work with you?
The best way is you can access my website, which is www.spiritspeakstome. And it's 2 as the number 2. And I'm sure you're going to put this in the
it'll be in the show notes for sure. Yeah.
But the best way to actually contact me if you're interested in getting more information or in setting up a session is probably to email me directly. That's probably the first way.
All right. And you want to give us that email real quick?
Yeah, easy email. It's just Laura Hoorweg at gmail.com.
Oh, that's easy. All right, good. Yeah, there probably isn't that many Laura Hoorwegs out there. It's not Laura Hoorweg.
No.
Probably.
I have to congratulate you. You actually got the pronunciation right, and most people really butcher it. So I'm impressed.
You're welcome. All right. Thank you so much, Laura. It's been an honor and a pleasure, as I said, and I look forward to future contacts with you. And we use that word contact. It has me think, ooh. And also, I can't leave without really saying what Mr. Peabody used to say all the time. Oh, Mr. Wizard. Thank you so much for being a guest, Laura. We'll catch you on the flip side. And everybody else, if you enjoyed the show, make sure that you actually comment, or you can like it, or you can share it, or even at best, you can even subscribe to it on Apple and Spotify, and I think 16 other places. Thanks again, Laura. Thank you for being here. We'll catch you on the flip side. Bye for now.
Bye, Fred.